Hi, I'm Symphoneers, and today we're taking a quick look at the May 29th banned and restricted announcement that takes Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Invoke Despair, and Reckoner Bankbuster out of Standard. We'll be talking about kind of what these bans affect, is the format saved, should they have banned other stuff, etc, etc. Let's get into it. So, really broad strokes, I think this ban is fine, but like bare minimum or kind of underwhelming. So this ban is very much optimized for breadth, or like hitting the fewest number of cards that affect the widest number of archetypes, in particular Fable and Bankbuster. Bankbuster, you can see, was played in 70% of, I believe Goldfish just pulls from ranked data, like tournaments and stuff. So 70% of competitive decks, basically, were running 3.3 Bankbusters on average, which is absurd, like ridiculous numbers. So on that front, just in terms of like diversifying the format and reducing the amount of kind of mid-range grindfest that Bankbuster incentivizes, great, like actually fairly impactful ban. Similar thing with Fable of the Mirror Breaker. 52% of decks is a 4 of. Fable, of course, is a backbone of Rakdos and other decks. Kind of unfortunately, it is also an important card for less meta decks, like just anything in red really that's doing anything a bit more janky tends to like Fable. I think jankier or weirder decks have some other options to kind of fall back on, and like Invasion of Urgamon can give you a little bit of card selection and a little bit of ramp from treasure and stuff, and it's nowhere near as good as Fable, but it can kind of do a similar-ish structural thing, especially for decks that don't really care about the reflection. It does meaningfully impact Rakdos, and in particular the gross play pattern of reflection of Kiki-Jiki copying Blood Tithe Harvester. Very happy to have that out of Standard, if nothing else. So also very good ban. This is probably the easiest to call ban out of everything that they could have banned. Like, Fable is everywhere. It's a big reason why the format kind of homogenized around Black-Red, so also a good ban. The other thing that kind of surprised me, honestly, was Invoke Despair. It does have a very high play and include rate of 43% with 3.7 played per deck. It has been, as they mention in the actual announcement, it's been a kind of backbone top-end piece for Rakdos decks for some time, but it is just a very kind of brute force card. In particular, I've played aggressive decks that I think can just outpace Invoke Despair. Sure, they resolve it, I chuck some bad creature or token or whatever to it, lose some life, and then I kill them on the backswing. So I'm a little bit surprised it got the axe over some other things, but the reasons that they cite in terms of it discouraging investment in enchantments and planeswalkers is very valid. I'm not like wildly surprised, or I don't think it's entirely out of left field or anything. Do I think these are good bans that will change things? Less than I would like. They speak to me to kind of like an unwillingness to be heavier-handed with bans, which I find a little bit frustrating. I think the bans are well chosen in the sense that, like, Bankbuster is just an extremely broad and impactful ban. Like how exactly it will impact things, it's kind of difficult to say, but something that is kind of this ubiquitous, like sucking that out of the meta, that'll do something. Kind of a similar thing with like Fable. The only ban that's a little bit odd or a little bit kind of narrow is Invoke Despair. Invoke Despair is kind of more complicated, but on another level it is also just a very kind of simple, straightforward card. So wanting to suck generic power out of Black and Rakdos, it does kind of make sense on that front. I find these bans kind of frustrating in that I don't think they do enough to shore up specific matchups. Like, aggro does not exist in competitive Standard right now. Just full stop. It is very bad. Like, we saw a little bit of representation at the recent, is it the Arena Championships or the Pro Tour? Like, there was a Soldiers deck in the top 8, and maybe something else that I'm forgetting, but there was little to no meaningful aggro representation. And I think missing some bans is pretty rough on that front. Shieldred is a big roadblock for aggro, still, and is going to keep being a roadblock. I don't think Shieldred will drop below 50% play rate as long as she is legal in the format. So yeah, not seeing Shieldred get the axe there is a little bit frustrating to me. I also think not banning Shieldred is a mistake. Paper isn't a huge focus of the channel, but for paper financial accessibility, keeping this card legal in Standard is kind of frustrating to me, just in that, like, you already hit Fable. You hit one big money card that is still going to be fine after this banning. Like, it is so good in just every format it's legal in. No one's losing money on Fable or whatever. I feel Shieldred's probably quite similar. Her price would dip a bit, but I think if you like take Shieldred out of the format, that is a big roadblock for aggro gone, and I am maybe more optimistic about people's kind of interest in, say, building a cheap aggro deck that can roll over black decks because they don't have this meatball that stonewalls them and heals up the opponent, and etc, etc, etc. Kind of similarly on that front, or like, let's just say that they are correct in that not banning Shieldred is, you know, a significant financial hit to paper players, and those are players that are really interested in kind of revitalizing their interest in Standard, and etc, etc, etc. Why not ban Cutdown? So Jim Davis's take on Cutdown, he mentioned it briefly in a recent article, was that just like Cutdown shouldn't even be in the discussion, that it is effectively a lightning bolt or something, it's good clean interaction, that the payoffs are what make it feel oppressive, and that like good clean interaction, this kind of class of card should not be a consideration for bans. I disagree pretty significantly. For one thing, I think that, like, if you are conceding that, like, financial value of cards is a reason to not ban them, I think that exerts more pressure to ban cards that are not, you know, excessively valuable, especially if they exert kind of format warping pressures. So that's kind of one reason why I would have liked to see, to have seen a Cutdown ban. The other, like, is that I think Cutdown functions at a rate kind of similar to a 75 or 80% empowered Fatal push most of the time. It is as good and as format warping as Lightning Bolt. Just kind of broadly speaking, it can even hit some things that Lightning Bolt can't, like unempowered Adeline. There's a lot of cards that Cutdown significantly depresses the value of, or like one of the reasons Mono Green continues to struggle in Standards is that like Augur of Autumn dies to Cutdown. Reckless Stormchaser was a really good card for Mono Red, especially like slower or more kind of thoughtful Mono Red, and that is just absolutely unplayable now because it dies to Cutdown. Like there's kind of a frustration for me just personally of like, if Cutdown is okay for Standard, why can't we get Lightning Bolt or something? The kind of snide or cheeky answer is just like, oh, that would just make Rakdos stronger, but kind of counterpoint is like, Burn would then have access to Lightning Bolt, the most ubiquitous and important card for Burn of all time, and would maybe actually matter in best of 3. That would be fun. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen a Cutdown ban, especially without a Shieldred ban. In particular, I think banning neither Cutdown or Shieldred means that aggressive creature-based strategies are still going to struggle a lot into the immense card quality that black-based decks still have. Like, Invoke or whatever, yes, it's a cool and impactful top end, or like flashy big top end, but they also just have a lot of other top-end cards. I am fully expecting, like, alternate builds of Black and Rakdos to emerge that just run Archfiends of the Dross or whatever, or I should maybe have picked something, you know, better than Archfiend of the Dross, but even Archfiend of the Dross is still very good. Kind of in the vein of Cutdown, I really would have liked to have seen a Bloodtithe Harvester ban. In particular, Bloodtithe Harvester, it's just 4 cards in one, which is inherently a design I don't like. Like, it is a creature, it is card advantage, it is removal, it generates an artifact if you are playing a deck that cares about artifact synergies, it has gross interactions with copying and stuff, which has been important to its play in Standard so far. I don't think Fable getting banned really impacts the evaluation of Bloodtithe Harvester. Yeah, it's a really important card for Reanimator strategies, which is something that I'm a little concerned about moving forward. In particular, decks that are like ramping out Atraxa and stuff, one of the best ways that they have to pitch them into the graveyard, especially kind of in light of the Fable ban, is going to be Bloodtithe Harvester, and I think that leaving this kind of Swiss Army knife of value and power that makes effectively every other 2-drop look like hot garbage. There is nothing in Standard in the same class as Bloodtithe Harvester, even with Fable gone. It is so low cost to hit Bloodtithe Harvester, just like financially, again, in terms of the like Cutdown thing of, if we're dodging big money cards, why not ban the format warping gross cards that, you know, aren't wildly expensive? So yeah, I really would have liked to have seen a Blood Tithe Harvester ban to kind of put a damper on future reanimation decks, as well as just to drain more power out of Rakdos and stuff. Some people, I assume, are going to be like, oh, you just want to nuke Rakdos from orbit? Yes, that is the point. Rakdos and black-based decks have been the best deck by a mile for over a year. Like, I would like anything else to have a chance, and I think that Blood Tithe Harvester is a real missed opportunity to help ensure that other stuff does have a chance. I'm just skimming things now. I think there's Graveyard Trespasser is really annoying, but probably not ban worthy, or like ultimately not super impactful. Liliana. To talk about Atali and Detraxa in general for a moment, I don't know that they're especially ban-worthy on their own. I would rather do the kind of Blood Tithe Harvester ban of, like, kill the extremely efficient Swiss Army knife support cards that make doing a Reanimator strategy trivial, like give those strategies some real deck-building costs, and leave the fun payoff cards in Standard. I think Atraxa maybe is more of a concern on that front, just because it does kind of lead to these real awkward games where, like, if they do the payoff once, the card draw that Atraxa provides kind of closes out the game regardless, because they can just drown you in value, whereas Tally can be annoying, or like can cascade into some really high impact cards, but is less consistent overall. So yeah, I would have rather seen Blood Tithe Harvester banned for their sins at this point. But maybe an Atraxa ban would have been good. I'm less sold on that. Gix's Command and stuff. There's a lot of cards that I personally find annoying, but I don't think necessarily require a ban. A good thing to mention on this front is maybe like the Wandering Emperor. I've seen some people concerned that mono white control is going to be a huge overwhelming force post bans. Maybe it benefits a bit. In particular, I think people are calling for the wrong ban when they talk about mono white control as a like preemptive ban or whatever. The Wandering Emperor, really good card, incredibly good card. I'm not going to like downplay how good the Wandering Emperor is, but on some level it is like a really fancy, high-quality Ravenous Chupacabra. I think that killing Farewell, or like banning Farewell, yeah, Sunfall is actually higher played right now, and I think that's better in terms of format health. I just personally, I worry more about Farewell because of the kind of reasons that Invoke Despair got banned. Farewell is just impossible for some decks to deal with, and especially if you are playing a deck that's invested in artifacts and enchantments and stuff and you're not playing counter magic, it's just like, well, I automatically lose the game because, you know, 8 turns or whatever are in the dumpster, I have no ability to rebuild, etc, etc. To kind of support that note, those decks cannot do the threat pacing that faster aggro decks can do of like holding haste threats back and not playing them out in anticipation of a sweeper, because they need to get engine pieces in place to support their game plan and stuff. So that's, yeah, I could talk about why Farewell annoys me forever and ever, but that's a whole thing. I would rather see those, like that kind of slot banned over the Wandering Emperor. A lot of people are worried about Esper Legends. We see Dennick here. I don't think Esper Legends is just as good as Rakdos. I don't know that it's even that close. Like, maybe even post-bans, but certainly pre-bans. In particular, Esper Legends can have some really awkward draws of like, I'm on a Multa 6, this hand has 2 Dennicks and 2 Thalias, but maybe I will draw, you know, the good cards and have the scary Rafine roll out that's hard for my opponent to deal with. And then you draw 2 more Dennicks and 2 more Thalias, and you flop around like a fish and die to your opponent that has a functional draw. Which is not to kind of downplay how scary Esper Legends is when it is firing on all cylinders and has like Skrelv into Thalia into Rafine, and they're just extremely difficult to interact with, and etc, etc. Like, Esper Legends is very good, but the kind of draw inconsistencies in it, I think, do kind of pose a meaningful problem in terms of it becoming the new tier 1 most played best of whatever deck. I really would have liked to see them hit Rakdos more. I think not softening up the field for aggro more is a mistake, because I think, yeah, Shieldred and Cutdown are just huge roadblocks for aggro existing in best of 3 that, yeah, those and Blood Tithe Harvester still existing, It's just gonna keep being rough. I'm not really expecting aggro to do much better. I'm expecting the big beneficiaries of this kind of ban announcement to be other mid-range decks, maybe mid-range decks in other colors like Bant Super Friends or whatever. Maybe that's a thing now. I think there are more reasons to play Bant with Invoke Despair in particular being out of the question, because Bant has Wedding Announcement and Planeswalkers and etc. Various kind of value-generating enchantments that it wants to get down. And yeah, maybe that stuff gets there, but I'm not super optimistic. I think Black's pool of card quality is just so deep that it really needed to be hit more. To kind of paraphrase or half quote a Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, tweet, if this is going to be the start of bans in Standard, like there's going to be another banned and restricted announcement in August for other formats, but it might potentially include Standard bans. Yeah, like if we have follow-up bans, now once they see like what are the impact of these bans, then maybe these bans look a little bit more reasonable in terms of like, okay, we've powered down the best deck in 7 formats. What does Standard look like with Fable gone and stuff? And okay, we're going to ban 3 more cards. If that's the case, you know, thumbs up. Or like, I don't hate this ban announcement then. If they just leave it like this though, especially if I'm kind of correct in that the needle doesn't actually move all that much because the bans are kind of so broad and don't really weaken any specific matchups, like way more than the others, outside of like some Invoke Despair stuff. If my kind of worries are accurate and they don't do anything, then that's going to be kind of like, ooh, frustrating and worrying for Standard. I was definitely hoping that their language and kind of philosophy around placing more scrutiny on cards and play patterns that have been in play longer to ensure Standard is fresh, engaging, and continually exciting. I was definitely hoping that this would function more as soft rotation, like if they hit the 10 kind of worst offenders in Standard and did that every year, that would be very solid. The big benefit of Standard rotation just in general is that you lose the fistful of awful cards that are unfun to deal with in a smaller format. And I like, if you can have a more targeted process of, you know, hitting that fistful of cards, but actually maintain the slower rotation that they've shifted to with a 3-year Standard, then that's actually like pretty compelling, in my opinion, pretty interesting. But if they are going to keep being hesitant to ban things, despite the shift to a 3-year Standard, it's pretty discouraging. I don't want to like Kermit scream hands in the air, skies falling too much, but I was definitely hoping for more of a hammer taken to the established decks in the format, more of a kind of sign that they were interested in soft rotation or just generally improving deck variety and format variety beyond, you know, maybe making Esper Legends kind of okay or whatever, which is I think what will happen with these bans. I think I'm running out of relevant or interesting points to say, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked me doing this kind of news or talky video, you know, like, subscribe, comment, etc. Helps the algorithm go burr. Consider supporting on Patreon and things. I need to hire an electrician to fix the outlet my stove is on. I can't cook any food. It's fine, but costs money. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching the video, and an extra big thank you to the Patreon patrons and YouTube members that help make these videos possible. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.